Aloha again. I would like to know how will it be published just in the Kaleikoa or where else?
It's there. The document is estimated to be about 500 pages, so it will not be published in like the Honolulu mountains or anything like that. It will be available on the website, on Kana'iolowalu's website, and I believe that there will be hard copies available at different various places, perhaps at the offices of the Hawaiian agencies. And I'm not really sure, but every effort we will need to make sure that it's accessible. But I think the most accessible way would be by going online to the website. And there has been discussion about extending the registration period as well, because actually that mana'o up there about if you don't sign on, you're out, I was very much in disagreement with that. There is no way that any of our people should ever be excluded. So there was that, and I was very upset when we saw that. I made a big hakaka within the commission, and I was wondering who was responsible for publishing such a thing, because our people should never be excluded. That is as opposed to, for example, if you look, I mean, this is not the same thing, but if you look to, they're looking for a time certain when not OHA, not the state, but the communities will organize to take the next steps. And the next steps would be something like an election of delegates to gather and put together a governing document, which will then go out to the people for their approval or disapproval, a process to continue until the people do approve. So there's been a lot of mana'o that this should not in any way be, state influenced at all. I would expect that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs would assist with underwriting the costs. I kind of think of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs as our national treasury at this time. But it is hoped that it will be in control of the people and not any no state, participation at all.
Okay, as I'm making my way over here, thank you all for being very respectful. I know some people might be going, how come Kyo is handing the microphone off? I'm not kidding about this. Sometimes in moderation, you hand the microphone off and you try and get it back and then so mahalo for your patience.
My question is for you, and I want to preface it by just saying that I have no doubt about your personal intentions and commitment and all of the work that you've done to allow you to mahalo for that.
I think I know your mom.
I think I know your mom. My mom, yeah, and I know your daughters. So the question, though, has to do with the fact that, again, not doubting your personal intentions at all, but as Kaleikoa pointed out, there are definitely interests within the state, within the legislature, at the executive level, that would like to see this process very much limited to only options that relate to either state or federal recognition, and that would be basically an opportunity to settle any claims as a final settlement that Hawaiians have to our land and sovereignty. And so I have two questions. The first part is, what is your and the Commission's political strategy to not let the process that you're pushing forward be driven by those interests? And the second part of the question is, you mentioned that one of the reasons why this is really important to you is to allay the everyday suffering that our people are still enduring. In the past, when I've asked other commissioners about how they see this process addressing issues like housing or various social services, education, they very much kind of brush those concerns aside and say, well, that's, again, something to talk about later. But I feel like if there is no game plan among the leaders of this process about those very issues that, we're saying, that you've expressed are the reason why to go down this road, then how can we have any debate? So just,
Thank you for that question. Because our kuleana is limited to registering and certifying a list. And one of the things I did want to say is, the idea that it would be exclusive to indigenous Hawaiians as opposed to perhaps everybody or even the descendants of those who were not Hawaiian and but were nevertheless citizens of the kingdom. Why would we exclude that? And this is not necessarily relevant to your question, but I did want to make a point about that. There are two reasons for this. The first is that our people formed the first government, and I believe in my heart that it predates 1843 Constitution, but that our people were the first ones to govern themselves on these islands, and since their political sovereignty was taken away, then it's their kuleana to restore it. But as my husband says, who has been fighting to restore water to East Maui for practically all his life, it's the Hawaiian people who suffered the consequences of the overthrow and colonization, more so than any other people. Everybody else has a homeland to which they can return. This is our homeland. So I just wanted to put that out, and that doesn't mean that in the future, if our people agree that they want to include others who are patriots with us, that they would not be invited or welcomed. But this is something that we want to do. So, and as far as the larger vision, just based on a retrospective experience with many groups for many years, I think the number one cardinal principle is that we would never take a step ever in any process that would ever extinguish our rights in any arena, lands, sovereignty, anything. No money for it and nothing. It would be, as we go forward, we would be very careful to make sure that our rights were never extinguished. So that's a major principle. I think, the vision is, for me, as a mother, since you say, my daughter who has 6 kids, by the way. And by the way, between my husband and I, we have 18 children and 2 great-grandchildren. Okay, so we want to fight hard for our babies. Is that getting to a point where we can exercise greater political autonomy in our homeland, where we no longer have to go beg the DLNR to please give us a little bit of water so we can grow our kalo. Getting to the point where we're actually at the table, not only at the table, but that's our table. I mean, that's the vision. There are only 5 commissioners, and when we talk amongst ourselves, we have different mana'o. So I can only share with you what I believe, but we're all in agreement that we want this to be a community process. And my concern really is leadership going forward. There are many organizations who have expressed interest in participating in the next steps, perhaps organizing or assisting with apportionment of our ahupua'a, so that we can understand how many representatives will come from each ahupua'a if that's the approach they decide. Some of the organizations are the larger ones, including the Sovereign Councils of Hawaiian Homestead Associations, the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. Some of the many, Tasha is here, she probably knows a lot, but they have come forward and have expressed interest in participating in assisting with taking the next steps to form our government. I think as far as a vision, for me, is get all the land back, create an economy where our babies can stay home and have Hawaii be their homeland and not be on the streets, not be on the beaches. With the beaches is maikai, but only if you want to be there. Create a Hawaii name where we have choices and options, so that we're not forced out of our homeland. So, I know that sounds vague, but my own personal vision is that it would be a democratic process that would be managed or overseen by our community, and that at some point when we have formed this government, we will, for lack of a better word, either demand or negotiate for the return of the things that were illegally taken from us. I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer, but that's my...
Just add two quick things. I just want to be very, very clear when I mentioned about the application and why, when they talked about the sovereignty of 1778, be very clear that framework, of course, works in conjunction with U.S. domestic law, which wants to limit Hawaiians as somehow indigenous, native Indian kind of legality. The truth is, that is part of our history. But when we're talking about sovereignty, we're talking about a political status, not an ethnicity. That's not one and the same thing. Ethnicity, you are still under the domestic control of the powers to be. So when you talk about the reason, there is a reason why that's ignored. And that's because it throws off the system. If you recognize that we have a political status, therefore, why do we have even the state of Hawaii? Yeah? Secondly, in regards to, I want to be very clear, there's a difference between government, the noun, and governing and governance, the verb. There is nothing that's preventing us right now from organizing. How are we going to handle our health of our people? How we will deal with banking and the economy? How we will deal with education, the Justice Department? These are things that we should be organized. And I would ask Oha again, why don't we have these kinds of organizing conferences where we have our Hawaiian bankers, not to say I love bankers, but I have Hawaiian friends who are bankers, get together to create plans and models of how are we going to control our resources? Or about people dealing with how are we going to feed ourselves? What are our health